Hello and welcome to another episode of Energy Insights. I am delighted to have Stanley Joseph with me in the studio today. Stanley is the CTO for VPI. Stanley, thank you for coming in. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Hey, thanks, Tarun. Thanks for the invite. Good catching up after a long time. I've been in the technology industry as a technologist for more than 25 years now. Started off as a programmer, and since then I've done all sorts of roles, be it architect, enterprise architecture, project management, portfolio management. So it gives me quite a good understanding, and then heading various departments. So it gives me a good grounding on technology and what different functions within technology do. And in the energy industry itself, I've been working in over 20 years in different parts of the energy industry. Majority has been in power generation, trading, and asset-based business, but I've spent time in the energy supply business and also some time in the oil and gas area. So it gives me quite a rounded view of the energy industry and how different areas of the energy industry work and what technology gets used. So I think it's given me quite a lot of insight on what works, what doesn't work, some challenges when we face it. And the technology and energy industry, with the transition which is happening in the energy industry at the moment, is in a fascinating space.
Well, I couldn't re-emphasize how pleased we are to have you in the room and unpack a lot of this and talk to us about a lot of the insights that you've gathered from 25 years of your experience in the domain. So, Stanley, it's appropriate to get started sort of unpacking your experience in power generation. What does the control room look like, and how and what sort of systems are used within the control room that provide them the insight to run these assets?
Yeah, I think power generation business is a fascinating business. You're on one side, working in a very safe culture with very experienced engineers who are focused on maintenance and reliability of the asset and optimizing the performance and making it operationally excellent. So I think it's working quite closely with them, understanding their challenges and how we can provide the right technology for them to achieve their objectives. I guess the other fascinating stuff within the power generation area, including the control room, is the convergence of IT and OT.
And expand for us, OT and IT?
Right. So IT is information technology, and OT is operational technology. And I think what happens in a power station is you've got these, power generation plants which are connected to various sensors, SCADA systems, and control systems, which kind of make the plant run and is used for maintenance and reliability of the plant. And then you've got the IT systems which sit on top of it, but maybe collecting data to generate insight, maybe systems to provide proper enterprise workforce management or asset management kind of tools. So I think we use for instance, Purdue model to kind of have different layers of systems at different areas. So, layer 0 to 3 is engineering, and 4 and 5 is where we focus on IT. And we have quite strong cybersecurity and compliance framework to ensure that the systems are robust and secure.
Absolutely fascinating once again. So, listening to you around the paradigm of the 5-tiered architecture, as you called out as well, within the control room, the difference between IT and OT, my next question would be, how viable is it to use a cloud provider to host some of these systems? You're given the scale of the data, there must be a need for elasticity around the compute. And, is it a myth that control room systems can run in the cloud, or from your experience, has it ever been possible?
Very, very interesting question. I guess, ardent cloud advocate might say everything should run on cloud. I guess I'm more pragmatic, and I think my view is that, for control rooms, especially systems which control the site, and for operational system, I think being on site and on-prem is the best way to ensure reliability and availability. Versus, I think, some of the IT systems, especially around data and getting analytics out of data, can be in the cloud, where you can use the elasticity to store a lot of data and get insight and processing power to achieve it. So for me, I think it is being pragmatic and going with a hybrid approach, so you don't compromise on reliability, but take advantage of cloud as much as you can.
Okay, and you mentioned VPP in your introduction. Could you tell us a little bit about VPPs?
Virtual power plants, I think, it's basically how do you kind of use distributed assets to aggregate together and to create a generation portfolio which is big enough. So virtual power plant has the ability to connect multiple sources of generation, be it batteries, peakers, or other renewable assets, to aggregate together to create a portfolio which can be in substantial megawatts, and using technology to then manage and control and provide power to the grid through technology, rather than a big power plant, is the concept behind virtual power plant.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about how VPPs are used, and where do they provide value? As in, does the overarching aggregation provide more benefit as compared to just using the asset on its own?
Yeah, like I think we are going into a sustainable world where we are moving away from big generation to a lot of smaller assets which generate green electrons. So I think managing a lot of small energy assets using a virtual power plant provides a lot of benefit, because some of these sites are quite small, unmanned. So you want like kind of remote operations and control. You should be able to kind of do a remote monitoring, remote dispatch. So I think a virtual power plant provides you the opportunity to expand and have a number of assets which are green in nature to come together to provide that power plant which the grid needs to manage its systems.
Okay, well, I'm intrigued to ask this question to you, given your title of a Chief Technology Officer, is what does the role of a CTO look like for a leading power generation and trading company? And what does the book of work look like as well? Because, it's one day is probably different from the other.
Yeah, a very good question. I guess it's an evolving role, and I think whilst as a CTO you are you bring the strategy, the technology strategy, the digital strategy to the organization, and provide the direction of travel on one side. On the other side, make sure you have a robust operation, a secure and robust operations in place in terms of providing day-to-day organizational support. Have a good program team, have a good security team which is kind of constantly monitoring the threats the organization is facing. I think that's kind of needed on a day-to-day basis. But I think the role is evolving, and where you find yourself, the role is moving into is being a digital advisor, looking at opportunities across the organization and connecting the dots on how the organization can be digitally transformed, or look at opportunities to create new business models using technology. So I think it's an evolving model of the role, and on a day-to-day basis, you're constantly trying to look at what is the tactical short-term decisions that needs to be made versus strategic plan you have, and making the right judgment call in terms of making sure you're kind of still achieving your strategic objectives and not compromising on day-to-day issues. So I think that's quite important. I guess in terms of having a strategy is quite important, and driving and being focused and being able to focus the organization towards achieving that strategy, I see is quite an important part of the role.
And I'm really interested in finding out that, because you see, with the world moving to net zero and decarbonization accelerating, we're moving into a world that we haven't been in before. And therefore, a lot of the historic strategies around trading, around power generation, were doing more of what had been done before. But in this new world, we're exploring what the new world would look like. And therefore, none of this really exists. So how do you, as a CTO, advise to your trading organization when those scenarios aren't played out? How do you train and research to provide that insight back to the business?
I think it's it's quite an interesting question. I think it's the whole energy transition is at play. I think it's quite fascinating how like all the system at a systemic level, how it is all interconnected, dynamic and changing as we move from the traditional energy sources to new energy sources. A lot of technologies are new, and that needs like understanding, research, meeting with the right teams, maybe meeting with external stakeholders to understand what that brings to the table and what it means technologically. So I think it's just kind of keeping yourself up to date, through your networks, peers, partners like yourselves, like Avanade, where you work with similar industry across the paradigm, doing your own research and being close to the business team, talking to them on the challenges they see in the energy transition, so we can provide the right technology solutions for that.
Brilliant. Okay, so with the regulatory emphasis becoming more and more demanding of power generation and trading businesses, the regulation keeps evolving every year and more of it comes in, right? So how do you balance investing in strategic transformation projects and programs to meeting the regulatory obligations of programs that must be done? It must be a tough battle to have to think about every year as you go into planning for budgetary reasons as well.
Yeah, I think, I think being in the power generation and trading business, I think, regulatory compliance and security is quite important, and it's quite, and we give a lot of emphasis to that. But like on the other hand, investing for future and making sure we are using technology innovation to kind of drive business models and digitally transform the organization is equally important. And I think it's a good point that they kind of lean on the same budget, the same kind of resources and same time. So how do you balance it? So I think one of the things we do is basically, once we get the demand and have a demand pipeline, we kind of weight it based on, does the demand of the number of initiatives we need to do align with the organizational strategy, the technology strategy? Does it meet any security obligations or regulatory compliance obligations? And what's the return on investment? And I think basically doing a weighted scorecard against these criteria, you can come up with your top 10 or top 15 initiatives, which is valuable. So I think that gives you a way to kind of decipher from the huge list you have, from the demand you've received. Now, I think further from that, I think, if there are a lot of security and compliance projects, you can use that as an opportunity as well to look at it, whilst you're doing a critical cybersecurity project. How can you use as a lever to do digital transformation together with achieving the robust security posture, similarly in the compliance space. The other thing I've done in the past is having a ring-fenced innovation budget if these are not possible. So you can still do small innovation and iterate and evolve as an organization.
I really love that, how you don't just do compliance projects, but use that as an opportunity of reimagining how systems can be transformed to, yes, one, meet the regulatory obligation, but moving the dial forward for the business to deliver more return on their investment as well, and the time draw that some of these regulatory projects tend to have back on the business as well. So given your extensive experience in data platforms and creating forecasts for demand generation from your years of experience, I'm really keen to understand from you, what is the value of data to a power generation and trading business?
Well, data is, I guess, very, very valuable for a trading and power generation business, because I think, having timely data from a trading perspective helps you kind of make the right decision. Delay in getting the data could lead you to kind of, you potentially making loss or missed opportunity. Similarly, data is, very important for power generation, like getting timely data to monitor and understand and analyze the assets and pick up trends which could potentially save you millions in terms of any breakdown in future is invaluable. So I think, data in both these spaces are very, very important. I guess, timeliness, getting timely data and value is, non-questionable. But one of the key bit around it, which is more challenging, is the data quality. So because you're making decisions based on data, having the right quality of data is very important. And that's what I've generally found challenging, is the quality of data. Because if you don't have the right quality of data, which means your decisions wouldn't be as accurate as you wish to, and that kind of leads to lack of trust with data, and then the value of data goes down in organizations. So I think the foundation is having a good source of data and good quality of data to build your data models or data solutions, which can come in a timely manner to inform you.
Okay, so you mentioned some of these challenges. How do you overcome these challenges? How do you plan the execution of data-led programs? Is the mentality go build a data platform and the business will follow, or is it one where you pick up a very selected subset of use cases that deliver value and build a platform on the back of that?
Yeah, like I've seen both approaches, unfortunately, during my time. And, I think it could be technology led, but that leads to a lot of data sources in a data platform, and not really getting the value out of data, and actually people losing interest in the data platform. So I think, I would definitely recommend use case led, business led, in a small set of very finitely understood use cases with clear return on investment, which you can kind of go into in a detailed fashion to understand what sources of data that involves. Are we getting it from the right source of data? What is the level of data quality for these data? And then kind of build those use cases into your platform. So, when you then leverage the insight from those data, that's trustworthy and helps you move forward in terms of decision making. And I think that's the eventual goal, that data, everybody has data. It's more, how do you take the insight from that data in the right way leads you to, getting opportunity or getting unique opportunity as a business.
And I'm sure you've never seen this personally yourself, but you would have heard in the industry that data programs have been susceptible to failures. What do you think leads to a data program falling over and not delivering the value that it was promising from the outset when the program was commissioned?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I've been in the data for long enough to be part of some of those data programs. So, I've seen why it doesn't work. And I think, some of them are basically it's technology led, and not having the right, I guess, first of all, it's kind of having a good multidiscipline team made up of technologists and the business, who kind of understand the challenges they're trying to solve, who have a good understanding of what kind of insight will help them to make business decisions to drive forward, and then bringing the right technology to make it happen. I guess if it happens the other way around, if it's technology led and you kind of bring in a lot of data and without use cases and value in mind, it leads to a lot of problems, including failures of multiple data platforms. And I think the other thing is, which I've learned over the course of my time, is training and enablement. I think sometimes you can have a great platform and a great solution, but if not everybody is, culturally aligned and trained to use it, I think again people could get disgruntled or move away to doing it how they did before. So I think it is a combination of taking everybody along, understanding what you're really trying to solve, taking the people along in the journey, and then coming up with solution which they find valuable from the insight they get, along with making sure everybody's trained and is aligned to the goals.
And I think the organizational change aspect is so important, letting the business be the champion of the platform by weaving them into the success of that platform, by having them as the core part of that team is so important as well. So, that is great insight. The question that I have then is, when you think about data platforms, the evolving nature of machine learning, deep learning, and now generative AI, how are you seeing that play out in power generation and trading?
Yeah, like I think, machine learning and AI has been there for a long time. I think people have been using machine learning for various things in trading and power generation. So things like algorithmic trading, you kind of create models, machine learning models, which kind of helps you kind of make the decision and execute automated trades. Similarly, there are pricing, forecasting models, which again, machine learning models, which has been traditionally used, market risk analysis or those kind of things. Again, a lot of traditional machine learning models are used. So I think these have been used for a very long time. I think it's maturing with new ways of doing things, and I think these are quite critical generally. And even if you look at the power stations, using the model to understand plant reliability, predictive maintenance, using machine learning is kind of where the industry is going and where you see most value for. I think generative AI does bring in a new dimension and kind of maybe fast track some of, or gives you a lot more benefit than before. So I guess, what you can get from a generative AI, along with machine learning coming into the picture, is kind of create or simulate market scenarios, or create a market, like a market environment using generative AI, which can kind of show you opportunities which you've not seen in the marketplace. You can kind of test your trade strategies using generative AI in simulated market environments. You can kind of maybe unpack new strategies you've not thought about, or new opportunities which you knew existed. Creating a lot of synthetic data to train your traditional AI models is another benefit which generative AI brings in. Then if you look into risk management, it's credit risk analysis, counterparty risk analysis, and analyzing a lot of content and creating reporting, be it compliance or security reporting. So there's a lot of things, I guess, generative AI can bring, which would change the dimension, or like maybe improve the way we use machine learning today, and add a big additional dimension to the use of data and AI.
And I like how you've sort of emphasized that generative AI is the evolution of machine learning and deep learning, and it's not an and/or situation where you must use one over the other, and where one can generate more value for the other. For example, synthetic data generation from generative AI to feed your heritage AI machine learning model is a great example. So for people that are yet to get started with generative AI in an enterprise, what would be your top tip? What would you say is the right way of approaching a Gen AI-led program for transformation?
Yeah, I think for me, I think, and with many other projects, I think, and it's applicable to Gen AI, is kind of starting with a small use case which you think, after discussion with your business stakeholders, is valuable. Because I think, again, technology-led, if you kind of start putting some solution which you think people might not be the best approach. I think it'll be like having a multifunctional or a cross-pollinated team with business and IT sitting together and coming up with scenarios where we truly believe as a team there is value, and trying out that in a pilot mode, and coming out with the result and seeing it, does that provide the business value you anticipated when you started. So that kind of, if that goes in a positive way, you have created champions and a bit of a momentum on why generative AI is useful and how it can improve what you're doing within the organization. So I would say start small, pick something which everybody feels will bring a lot of value, and then try it out and see how that goes. And that then you create a momentum which will lead to further investments and further, more interesting use cases down the line.
So here's my little challenging view to you to say, is there a risk by being POC-led on small initiatives with Gen AI that the bigger picture around the outside and inside out transformation could get lost?
I think there's a risk on the other side as well. Like if you kind of turn a generative AI project into a big initiative or big strategic organizational transformation, there is a lot of factors to consider when you bring generative AI in the organization. The security and the cyber security aspect of it, the ethical consideration, the regulatory compliance nature of generative AI. And I think, if you kind of go big and people are not in the journey and have a lot of concerns around these aspects of generative AI, it could backfire and lose momentum very quickly. So I think like starting small, get with the right stakeholders and champions, and gaining momentum is a way to kind of bring bigger momentum for an organizational transformation, rather than, I think, going big on this. That's my personal view. But yeah, like I think it could work for different organization or different organization types.
Sure. So I mean, together we've looked at the more RAG, the retrieve, augment, generate use cases for generative AI, and then there's the more disruptive new agentic RAG in the mix with teams of agents working together and them almost simulating the real life teams. And an agent can bring out the best of another agent by critiquing them, by challenging them, by supplementing them, and using purposeful heterogeneous agents for the right capabilities that they offer and get them to work together to accomplish jobs that teams would have done, right? So there's that mix of the RAG-based, the agentic-based generative AI initiatives. Talk to us a little bit about, where are you seeing the application of these two different technology types almost across a power generation and trading business?
Yeah, I think the RAG-based model is where at the moment we are focused on in terms of generating content and getting the value most out of it. I guess in terms of process orchestration and automation, I think that needs a lot more thought in terms of like working with our compliance teams, our regulatory teams, our cybersecurity teams, because I think the risks are much bigger because you're kind of letting machines talk to one another, critique each other's work, and it's kind of sense a little bit of losing the control on what you can do. So I think like that needs a lot more unpacking. I think the important thing here is like having the models which are transparent, so the observability is clear, so you have a real audit trace of what really it is doing rather than having a black box. So I think I would say like the RAG-based one is a good one to start small with. I guess orchestration with agents is something quite interesting for future, but it needs a lot of thinking and a lot of consideration as an organization.
I'm going to put you on spot here now, Stanley. If you had to put a number to the kind of P&L upside that can be obtained with these different paradigms of generative AI applications, what would your viewpoint be?
Yes, I'll have to guess here. I think it's quite a difficult one to put a number on. Like I guess it depends on organizations and what they're trying to achieve. But I guess on top of the line, I guess if using generative AI, you come up with new business models, new differentiated solutions or new offerings, it could increase your revenue or your top line. And I think this is quite difficult to guess, but I would say like 10 to 20%, depending on type of organization, what you're trying to do. I guess I see much more benefit on the bottom line, where there is a lot which can be done in terms of employee productivity, creating smart workers, automation of repetitive tasks, process automation, improvement of processes, and optimization. So yeah, I would say the bottom line could be increased by 20 to 30%, and that's being a bit conservative, I guess.
Great. I mean, so there's wins either side of the spectrum. It's about getting started in a controlled fashion, weaving the business into the conversation, making it use case led, and then scaling the programs as you start to see the success and de-risking the transformation, so to speak, without going big bang.
Absolutely. I think for me, getting the momentum, de-risking it, making sure you understand the compliance side of things, the ethical considerations, the regulatory considerations, and then making progress is what would be a successful implementation of Gen AI.
Okay. Well, Stanley, what are your top 3 predictions for the future for power generation and trading?
It would be wrong not to talk about generative AI, considering we spend a lot of time now discussing it. So I would say one of the things would be generative AI. I think we are at a very early stage of generative AI journey. So there is a long way to go, and a long way for organizations to be digitally transformed with Gen AI, and even using advanced AI ML techniques. So I think that's quite exciting, and I think there's a huge opportunity there. So I would say that's probably definitely my number one. I would say the second would be extended reality. So it's like a combination of, and a lot of hardware is improving in virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality. So a combination of extended reality with the right solution would be quite interesting. I think especially with the power station, where you've got people who are working in very hazardous condition. So if you can simulate that scenario in extended reality, you can make it very easy for people to train and learn the ropes without having to expose them to hazardous conditions. I would say that's very exciting as the technology matures, and I'll keep an eye on that. And finally, for me, I think it's a bit out there and maybe a bit further down, is quantum computing. I think a lot can be changed from once that becomes a reality, from current traditional computing methods in terms of the modeling, the data crunching which can be done, versus the strategies and the data crunching which can be done in quantum computing. So I would say that would be my third. So that's probably my top 3.
I love how you teased out the third one there, because we're sort of we're elastic with cloud to achieve the scale of compute that's necessary to do our scheduling problem solving with high performance compute, but at the same time we're restricted to the binaries that are available in the current programming paradigm. So to have quantum at our disposal with qubits to be able to bring in new scheduling paradigms not only solves for scheduling of these assets, but also how do we decongest, how do we plan our pipeline networks, our transmission networks, our distribution networks. So definitely one to focus on, and I, like yourself, have my eyes properly tuned in for how that unravels over the next 18 to 24 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's basically we are in a very interesting phase with the energy transition, and technology has a big role to play, and technologies like quantum computing can kind of really help the network in terms of understanding congestion, where the demand is. So I think there's a huge opportunity with all the things we talked about, generative AI, ML, to help us move towards sustainability and achieving our targets.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you in the studio, Stanley. It's great, and we hope to have you back in 18 months' time when you've delivered more with generative AI, with data platforms, and come and hear your insights on them in more detail.
Thanks for the invite, and it was great, I think, talking to you, and also understanding your wider perspective you have on the industry and how things are evolving and trends are changing. So yeah, look forward to the conversation.
Thank you.